Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a blue, black and green or Sultai Elf deck, and it's been a while since we've last looked at an elf deck, but we did get a fair number of new elves, so it's worth taking a look at the deck. And the deck is basically a mono green deck splashing blue and black, so you're not going to see any double black or double blue cards in the deck, since we're just splashing those colors. So let's take a look at the entire list here, starting out with Oath of Nissa, provides some card selection. Our deck is mostly creatures and this can help us find some of our heavy hitters. We've got Bone Splinters as one of the few removal spells we can run since it's only single black, and we do have a number of expendable creatures like Elvish Visionaries and random elf tokens that we can sacrifice to have access to an unconditional removal spell. Sylvan Advocate is an elf and is just a solid creature by himself, and also synergizes with our land creatures that we also have a fair number of. Then we have Dwynen's Elite, which is a 2/2, and if we control another elf when he enters the battlefield, we get another 1/1 elf warrior creature token, so that's one of the tokens that we can sacrifice to a Bone Splinters, for example. So if we get 3 power and 3 toughness for just 2 mana, that's a pretty good deal. Then we've got Kujar Seedsculptor, which is an addition from Kaladesh, so a 1/2 that when she enters the battlefield we can put a +1/+1 counter on one of our creatures. She is an elf and we also have a small sub-theme around +1/+1 counters, so she fills both roles and is just a solid creature to play on turn 2. We've got Elvish Visionary, because you can't have an elf deck without Elvish Visionary, just a very good creature being an elf, putting a creature into play with our elf synergies and then drawing a card, so we're not down on card advantage, just does a lot of good things for the deck. Then we have Skyrider Elf, which is one of the reasons why you would want to play blue in an elf deck, since it's a flying elf that has Converge, and in a 3-color deck this is regularly going to be a 3/3 for 3 mana if we have black, blue and green mana. So a 3/3 flying for 3 mana that's also an elf is pretty good, and it also has a number of +1/+1 counters thanks to Converge, so synergizes with our +1/+1 counter theme as well, so a decent creature in this deck. Then we've got Nissa Vastwood Seer, which is an elf that finds us a land and then can transform into Sage Animist to provide some card advantage. We've got 2 copies of Reclamation Sage, which is an elf that can fight the menace of all the artifact and vehicle decks, as well as randomly hosing the Sphinx's tutelage decks by destroying enchantments. Then another Converge creature in Tajuru Stalwart, so a 3 mana for an 0/1 but has Converge, so if we can spend green, black and blue to cast the Stalwart, this is going to be a 3/4, which is pretty decent for 3 mana, and as well comes with a number of +1 counters that synergize with our +1/+1 sub-theme, so another decent creature for the deck. Then we've got Shaman of the Pack, which is one of the reasons to be black, since it's a 3/2 that deals, well, not actually deals damage, but makes the opponent lose life equal to the number of elves we control when she enters the battlefield, so this can quickly take out an opponent once you have a number of elves in play. So it just takes 1 or 2 Shamans of the Pack to win a game. Then we've got Nissa Voice of Zendikar, which makes plant tokens and also puts +1/+1 counters on our creatures, which works well with our +1/+1 counter sub-theme, and then can also ultimate to draw us a bunch of cards. We've got Dwynen, a Gilt-Leaf Daen, which is a 4 mana 3/4 with reach, so can actually block cards like Smuggler Sculptor, and gives all other elves we control +1/+1, and also gains us a bunch of life when she attacks. Then Armorcraft Judge, which is an elf and is the reason why we have the +1/+1 counter sub-theme, since it's a 3/3 that draws us a card for each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it, so if we can just curve one of our 2-drops with a +1/+1 counter into one of our 3-drops with a +1/+1 counter and then play Armorcraft Judge, we get a 3/3 that's an elf and that draws us 2 cards, so that starts getting pretty awesome. And then finally, 2 copies of Lys Alana Huntmaster, which used to be one of the better cards in the deck since you can make lots of elf tokens and then try and kill someone with a Shaman of the Pack, but there's only so many 4-drops you can run, and there's a lot more removal than there used to be, so the Huntmaster is pretty vulnerable, but once you do get him going, he can also definitely win you a game. Then our mana base, 1 island, 2 swamps, 5 forests, so we have plenty to grab with our Nissa Vastwood Seer. Then some creature lands in Lumbering Falls and Hissing Quagmire to go with our Sylvan Advocate. And then some duels here in Sunken Hollow, Woodland Cemetery, Drowned Catacomb, Hinterland Harbor, and to fix our mana we also have Evolving Wilds. So that's the deck, and now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which only has 1 land, no green. If this were a forest I might keep because we have Oath of Nissa, but this is a mulligan. And this is a little awkward since we have 2 lands that come into play tapped, but I think we can keep. And as soon as we draw any basic land, all these start coming into play untapped, and we have a decent curve. So hopefully we can draw something like a forest here. And well, that's another duel that doesn't come into play untapped, unfortunately. So I guess we want to play a green one. So I think I'll go with the cemetery here. So that's a little unfortunate that we drew all of the duels that check for basic land types, and we don't have any of the basic land types. Alright, the opponent on a blue-red aggressive artifact theme deck with Inventor's Apprentice and Eager Construct, but the Eager Construct can't attack yet. And still no untapped lands. Alright, so I think we go with the Hinterland Harbor. Next turn we can play Elvish Visionary, and that can at least block the Eager Construct, or Bonded Construct I should say. There's a lot of constructs lately. And if we can land something like a Stalwart, that's gonna play defense quite nicely against what the opponent's trying to do. We have a card that makes +1/+1 counters, and we have the Armorcraft Judge. So as long as we draw some lands, we should be fine. Plus we have Nissa that can find us another basic forest. Would have been nice to play the Visionary on turn 2, but what are you gonna do? Opponent with an Inventor's Fair, pretty far away from activating it. As we'll take 4 down to 16. And no play from the opponent, interesting. Alright, there's our forest, a turn late. So what do we want to do here? Could just play out the Stalwart. There's a possibility that our opponent has some sort of removal spell, but I think I like it more than Visionary or Nissa, since Visionary dies to multiple burn spells that the opponent could have, while the Stalwart has a chance of surviving some burn spells. And the opponent has to deal with this, otherwise they can't attack. And if it survives, we might be able to curve into the Armorcraft Judge. And now I think I realized that I probably should have played the Catacomb, since we have more forests in the deck than we have islands or swamps. And now this still comes into play tapped, while the Hinterland Harbor would have come into play untapped after playing the forest. So a small misstep. The opponent attacks here, so leads me to believe they have some sort of trick or burn spell to finish off our Stalwart, but I don't think I mind. If they have a build to smash, that's the +3/+3 combat trick, we still wouldn't be able to kill the Bonded Constructs. I think I'll just block the Inventor's Apprentice here and see what happens. Alright, there's the build to smash. So no trample, since this is not an artifact, and we only take 2, so not the end of the world. And there's another forest, alright, so not getting punished too severely for playing the wrong land earlier. So what do we want to play now? The Judge is not super appealing anymore, since we don't have the Stalwart in play anymore. I guess we can just play Dwynen. Although without any other elves in play, she's not that exciting, but I guess it's better than doing nothing. And then next turn we could go Nissa plus Elvish Visionary with the land that we get off of Nissa. So don't mind playing the Dwynen. Could have also gone Elvish Visionary plus Bone Splinters, but I don't think I want to waste the Bone Splinters on one of these 1-drops. So let's see what the opponent has to offer here. They played a second colorless land, so they might be struggling with their colors, who knows. So this looks like another build to smash. But again, I don't think I mind, since these blocks are not going to get much better, and it probably takes up the opponent's entire turn. So I think I'll just make the same block and see what happens. Alright, so it might be a burn spell instead of a pump spell. Alright, Harness Lightning, so that's fine. And I want to take out the Apprentice, since the Visionary can just trade with a Bonded Construct, plus the Bonded Construct can't attack alone, and we drew another Dwynen, so that's nice. So here I think we just go Nissa plus Elvish Visionary, and hope this works. Get a forest, and then play Visionary. Alright, another Judge, but unfortunately no +1/+1 counters in sight. So next turn probably just gonna play the Dwynen. Another Apprentice. And alright, that's a card that I probably wanna try and kill. So artifacts they control have hexproof, and the opponent's gonna draw a card every turn, basically, so I think we just want to use our Bone Splinters here, and I'm not going to sacrifice anything but the Elvish Visionary here, so might as well do that right now. Destroy, sacrifice, and I guess we play out our Dwynen. Still have a chance of drawing into one of our +1/+1 counter creatures, and then these get a lot better. And now our Catacomb is also gonna come into play untapped. Don't have any decent attacks here, since we would be trading Nissa for an Inventor's Apprentice. And next turn we can transform Nissa and start drawing some cards. Alright, Ruins of Oran Reef. So the opponent could sacrifice the Foundry of the Consuls here end of turn. But we do have a reach creature, and there we go, Skyrider Elf is a perfect draw here, since that's both a flyer to block the Thopters and a creature that puts +1/+1 counters on itself. So let's transform our Nissa here. And draw an extra card, since I think that's better than making a 4/4. Oath of Nissa we can play out before we do anything else. See what we can find. Alright, Seedsculptor is actually, I think, better than the Shaman here, since it's another creature with +1/+1 counter implications. And then play out the Skyrider Elf for 3. Play out Seedsculptor, and next turn we can start going crazy with card draw. And here, where do we put the +1/+1 counter? The opponent has 1 spare energy, so if they draw into another lightning, they could take out the Skyrider Elf. But I think I want to put it on another creature besides the Skyrider Elf, since that way we draw more cards with the Armorcraft Judges. And I don't think we need to put it on the Dwynen, since that's kind of putting all your eggs in the same basket. So this way we spread around the goods. Opponent gets to gain a life off of the Inventor Sphere, which is fine. They're gonna sacrifice it so they can look for any artifact. Find Pomad Courier, alright. Not a card I would have chosen. There's probably a Smuggler Sculptor in the deck somewhere, but we have a 4/4 flyer, so, and I guess a 3/4 reach, so the Copter is not gonna do much anyways. So now we're just gonna slowly take over the game with all our card advantage. Opponent with a last ditch attack. So let's see. Let's put this there. I guess we want to probably take out the flyers more than anything. Could also go with the Bomat Courier. Could also prevent more damage by blocking one of these. So this way our opponent deals 2 damage to Nissa. Well, I guess we can actually take out the Bomat Courier, force our opponent to sacrifice it. This basically denies them 1 extra card off of the Bomat Courier. And Nissa's still gonna survive, so I think this is fine. Opponent sacrifices the Courier to basically draw 1 card at random. So this is fine. Alright, let's, I think, start by plussing. Alright, comes into play tapped. Let's play an Armorcraft Judge. Draw 2 cards. Alright, Reclamation Sage could take out a Thopter, but I think I prefer to draw an additional 2 cards here. Sweet. Got the Sylvan Advocate plus Lumbering Falls going, and here I don't actually mind attacking with everyone. Try and close out the game, gain some life off of Dwynen, and if the opponent wants to spend their resources taking out Nissa, we're just gonna kill them with the elves we have. So we did have the pretty important Bone Splinters, otherwise the opponent would have started to draw a lot of extra cards, and that's definitely one of the weaknesses of the elf deck, that it doesn't have a ton of removal options. But if you're playing against an artifact deck, then a Reclamation Sage is pretty sweet. Opponent with Chief of the Foundry, but they're playing defense, so I think taking out the Chief is probably our best bet, but let's draw some cards first. Forests. Alright, so I think we can play the Reclamation Sage, take out the Chief. And then we can still play Sylvan Advocate and activate Lumbering Falls. And I didn't do the math, but I think this is enough. Let's find out. So let's see, 3 blocks. They take 10, so I guess they go to 1 here if they jump with all 3. That's still fine. Playing on our Lumbering Falls. No plays. And let's just get it over with. Alright. Sweet. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks decent. We've got a decent curve, although we don't really want to play the Dwynen's Elite before another elf, so we might lead with Oath of Nissa here. Another Evolving Wilds is not really what we needed, so we could play Oath of Nissa, or we could just play a tapped Lumbering Falls or Evolving Wilds. Actually, probably gonna just go with the Lumbering Falls here, since we're probably just not gonna play the Elite on turn 2, and this way we can go Oath of Nissa plus Evolving Wilds, and then set up for a turn 3 Stalwart, and we'll have plenty of untapped lands for future turns. And this gives us more time to choose something with the Oath of Nissa that we might need. Don't really know what we're up against yet. though drawing lands is not what we need here. So I think we fetch first with the Evolving Wilds, so we don't have to shuffle our deck after the Oath of Nissa. Get a Swamp out of our deck, and then play Oath of Nissa. Try to find some action. Alright. I think we go with the Nissa over the Shaman, since Nissa can potentially draw some cards when she ultimates, and it's an alternate angle of attack. Probably still gonna go with the Tajuru Stalwart here, and if we can put some counters on our elves, we can start going wide. Cathartic Reunion from the opponent, so who knows what they're on. Usually Reunion goes with Reanimator style decks, but they just discarded 2 lands, so not sure. Another land is not great. I think we just go with a Stalwart for 3. Then next turn we can probably play out the Elite. Could play Nissa, start making plant tokens, but at least this applies a little bit of pressure. And after all, we are still trying to be a somewhat aggressive deck. Even though we don't have any 1-drops, really. A Lightning Axe is fine. Discarding a land. So that's a 2-for-1 in our favor. Does turn off our Dwynen's Elite. And now we draw the Armorcraft Judge without any creatures with +1/+1 counters, but we do have the Nissa that can potentially put some counters on our creatures. So I think we just play Nissa and a tap land here. Since playing the Elite without an elf in play is not great. And this gives us an extra turn to potentially draw into one. And the plant protects us from the Quagmire. And we might be able to go Elite minus Nissa, put counters on our creatures, and then play the Judge if we have 6 mana. So I would like to set up a turn where we can minus Nissa and play the Judge in the same turn when the opponent's tapped out, so we can draw a bunch of cards. Let's see if the opponent wants to fire up the Quagmire. Nope, they're ramping with Explosive Vegetation. So next turn is going to be pretty scary. And we keep drawing lands, unfortunately. So what do we want to do? I don't hate making another plant token. And then just playing out the Elite. Does walk into a Sweeper. But I actually don't mind if our opponent's play next turn is just a Sweeper. So I think we go Elite and then fetch with Evolving Wilds. And then next turn we can go minus Nissa and then play the Judge. Yep. And don't have enough mana to also activate a creature land to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Since putting +1/+1 counters on creature lands is pretty sweet, since the counters will stay on it even after there are no creatures. Opponent with a Plated Crusher, which is not bad. Nissa the draw, so that can replace this Nissa when she will eventually die. But for now we can just minus and draw some cards, which is not bad. Draw 3. Alright, another Judge. So if our opponent doesn't have a Sweeper, we can actually start drawing lots of cards. And we'll say go here. If Nissa somehow survives, we could go Stalwart minus Nissa and play Judge and draw 5 cards. But our opponent is going to poop on our party with the Radiant Flames, and then they're gonna kill our Nissa with the Plated Crusher. But I guess we still have Stalwart plus Judge to draw a card and Nissa to replace the old Nissa. Opponent also activating the Quagmire. We do have our own Quagmire to try and block the Plated Crusher, which is a way to answer it, even though it has hexproof. So I guess Bone Splinters would actually not do much here. Dwynen is interesting. So I think we still go Stalwart plus Judge here. Make our opponent spend another attack on our Nissa. For 3. Could also keep up our Quagmire, but our opponent does still have 2 cards in hand, so if they have any instant speed removal, then activating the Quagmire would not be great. So we do have some options. Let's see, is it better to just play the Judge, draw a card? We do just have the potential of double blocking the Plated Crusher with Judge and Stalwart, so opponent might not even want to attack with the Plated Crusher. So I think playing out the Judge is fine here. If our opponent wants to Lightning Axe or Stalwart, that's also fine. Alright, more lands. So hopefully the opponent doesn't have a second sweeper. And now the interesting question is, if our opponent attacks, do we double block or not? Opponent does attack, so we would get kind of blown out if our opponent does have a removal spell for one of our creatures. And they're just attacking our Nissa when we have a replacement Nissa. So maybe we just let this happen. Or we can double block, our opponent has a removal spell, we lose both creatures. And then next turn we can play Dwynen, play Nissa, draw a card. Doesn't seem great. Yeah, I think given that we have the Dwynen, keeping our creatures alive is probably what we want to do here. Alright, so opponent lets us untap, we find Reclamation Sage, which doesn't do a whole lot. So I think what we want to do is play Dwynen, don't play a land yet, attack with our creatures. Let's see if our opponent wants to use a removal spell on our Dwynen, or if they want to activate their Hissing Quagmire. And then post-combat we play Nissa and plus, or could also minus. Could also just play a land and activate the Quagmire. But I don't mind attacking and trading for the opponent's Quagmire here. Looks like they might have missed the window to activate the Quagmire. Think it's too late here. Yep, so they take 8. Down to 12. So the fact that their opponent did want to block with the Quagmire leads me to believe they do not have another sweeper effect, otherwise they would just let this happen and then play their sweeper. So now the option is play Nissa and maybe draw a card, or just keep up our Quagmire to block the Plated Crusher. I actually don't hate keeping up the Quagmire this turn. That way our opponent has to maybe spend a removal spell on the Quagmire and we can attack back for probably lethal combined with the Lumbering Falls. Alright, the opponent has a Gaia's Revenge. It's not our big one. 8/5 haste. Let's see if they attack or not. I think I'm willing to trade with either of these if our opponent does attack. So they're just attacking with the Gaia's Revenge. And I think we just offer the trade here. Could also just chump with the plant token, which is an option. But now that our opponent's tapped out of red mana, I think this is probably our best window to trade a Quagmire for one of the opponent's creatures. So that works. They're keeping the Crusher on defense. And now I think we play Nissa and draw a card. Don't have many forests left. Start plussing. Visionary is a nice one. So let's see, if we wanted to attack with everyone, including the Lumbering Falls, opponent blocks a 4-powered creature, takes 10 down to 2, but we would lose one of our creatures, so might be a little too aggressive. So I think I'm happy just playing the Visionary and then maybe also the Stalwart. Alright. And yeah, since our opponent did not show a sweeper last turn, I think it's pretty safe to play out the Stalwart here. And then next turn we might be able to make a lethal attack with everyone. Well, there's Ulamog. That's not a card I was really counting on appearing. But it's gonna be pretty good here, exiling 2 of our elves. Still don't have any great attacks. Well, I guess Oath of Nissa could help. I guess a reason to make that attack last turn is if we can draw into a Shaman of the Pack, we can maybe finish off our opponent. Instead, we kind of have to play defense in a weird way. Ulamog attacks us once, exiles 20 cards. And then maybe we can make a lethal attack. So definitely just going to run out all my creatures here. Question is, where do we want to put our +1/+1 counter? And I think, let's see, if our opponent has a Languish, we're dead anyways. I guess we just want to spread out the power and toughness as much as possible. So I guess I'll just put it on the plant token. If our opponent has a Radiant Flames, I might want to put it on the Judge instead. And they did already show us a Radiant Flames. But then we're not spreading out the power as much as possible when going wide. So I think we just put it on the plant. And say go. No attacks here. But maybe next turn we can make some decent attacks. And if we do draw a Shaman of the Pack, that would be pretty sweet. Would be dealing 7 damage. Put the opponent to 5 and then attack with everyone. Alright, opponent's casting a Bitter Revelation. So they're probably looking for a sweeper, but it's gonna cost them 2 life. They put Pulse of Marasa and Nissa's Revelation in the graveyard, and they're gonna cast the Necromantic Summons because they were a Reanimator deck after all. And they're getting back a Gaia's Revenge. But if they're not going to attack with it, it doesn't really matter that they got back a Gaia's Revenge, since they still have the same amount of blockers if they didn't cast the reanimation spell because of the Hissing Quagmire. So next turn, if we animate Lumbering Falls, Opponent blocks our 2 largest creatures, takes 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I think we just let this through and then attack with everyone next turn, and that's probably gonna do it. Unless I miscountered. 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and Shaman of the Pack is gonna make that a lot easier, but I think we got there even without the Shaman of the Pack. Activate Lumbering Falls. And attack with everyone. And I guess unless the opponent has a fog, that's the card that could save them, but so be it. Well, I guess we should have attacked first, but then the opponent would have used a fog anyways. And then opponent is not dead, they attack us with Ulamog, exile our library, and we lose anyways. So yeah, well, good beats. Fog in a Reanimator deck is not something you see very often. I guess that's why they didn't take the Pulse of Marasa. Still a little strange. But I guess it does make some amount of sense since they were dead on board if they attacked with Ulamog last turn. So they must have had something. I guess something we could have done is attack with a non-lethal amount of elves, trick the opponent into not using the fog, and then play the Shaman of the Pack, but I think the opponent's using the fog there no matter what, so I don't think we could really do much about it. But anyways, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks decent-ish. A lot of tap lands here, but I think we'll make it work. So here, I think we want to play the wilds first, so that we have the 2 basics for the Sunken Hollow. So probably want to get either a swamp or an island. Probably gonna go with a swamp here. And then turn 2 we can go Sculptor, and turn 3, thanks to the Hollow, we can play the Stalwart. And then we can go turn 4 Falls plus a second Stalwart, so we can curve out nicely. Opponent on Inventor's Apprentice. Alright, Shaman is a nice addition. And if we ever draw our Armorcraft Judges, they'll draw us tons of cards. So let's see if the opponent has a turn 2 Smuggler Sculptor or not. Nope, a Key to the City, still pretty good. It's gonna allow them to make their creatures unblockable if they want to. Also nice Madness outlet, so we have to keep all the Madness vampires in mind. No point in attacking here. So I think we just play out a Stalwart and say go. Let's see if the opponent has something like an unlicensed disintegration. Alright, they're just gonna play a Bloodhall Priest, which I guess is pretty good here. 4/4, thanks to Madness. But they decided not to use it as a surprise blocker. Instead they just want to get in for 2. Don't have a great answer to the Priest yet. Yeah, I guess we're just playing a Lumbering Falls and another Stalwart. And saying go. Dwynen would be a nice draw, making our elves larger. And I guess we do have Sylvan Advocate, which at some point will be a 4/5. Opponent chooses to draw with the key by paying 2 mana. Bowmet Courier. Let's see who they want to make unblockable this turn. Well, they're going for the priest, so that does potentially free up an attack on our part. So not too sad about this. Alright, Reclamation Sage is a nice one. So we can actually kill the key before the opponent gets to untap with it. But I think we want to attack first and give the opponent less information to work with. And if they somehow get rid of the Bowmat Courier, their Inventor's Apprentice might shrink to the point where if they block our Seedsculptor, it might die. So I think we just attack with everyone. And if the opponent does jump and then block here, well, they decided not to block with the Inventor's Apprentice, which I guess is a smart move. So here, let's keep up green mana to represent a potential pump spell and get rid of the key. Opponent can still attack us, but at least the Inventor's Apprentice is smaller now. And let's get a forest with the Evolving Wilds. And next turn we have a nice turn of Sylvan Advocate plus Shaman. And I think the priest is gonna have to stay on defense, instead it's getting in there, so they might have another blocker. So they're attacking for 5. Don't have an artifact for Unlicensed Disintegration to deal us 3 damage. Could trade. But if they have another Bloodhall Priest, I think we wanna force through some damage and then play Shaman. So I think we just take this, since getting rid of our elves when we have a Shaman in hand is not where we want to be, and so they do have the second Bloodhall Priest. Hopefully their last card is not a Lightning Axe. So let's play the land before playing the Sylvan Advocate, so it's a 4/5. And then play Shaman and see what the opponent wants to do. If they have a Lightning Axe, they might want to use it in response. So the opponent is down to 9. If we attack with everyone, they take 5, 6, 7, down to 2. I think that's worth it. And we still have 2 blockers on defense. And then next turn we also have the Lumbering Falls with the Sylvan Advocate. So let's see if this pays off, or if the opponent has 2 removal spells here. If they have Unlicensed Disintegration plus something for the Shaman, I guess we're dead. Alright, it's just a Bowmat Courier, does bump up the Inventor's Apprentice. And now a potential Unlicensed Disintegration can kill us. So we're definitely blocking the Priest if our opponent allows us. So they're sacking the Bowmat Courier hoping to find something. So let's see, take 4. If we block like this, we take 4, the best our opponent can have is, let's see, Unlicensed Disintegration, doesn't do it since it doesn't deal damage because they don't have an artifact in play. And the best burn spell for that mana cost is maybe just the Drain 3 life with Madness. Put the opponent at 5. And yeah, I think this is pretty safe. And let's see what happens. Alright, sweet, we got there. So the opponent never saw one of their Unlicensed Disintegrations, but they were pretty light on artifacts this game. So let's see, what's the safest way to go about it? I think we might as well activate Lumbering Falls, since it has hexproof, so can't be messed with. And this has Vigilance, so it's pretty safe to attack with it, so let's just send in everyone. Managed to beat the infamous red-black artifact deck. I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, Have a nice day.